The next generation of South Africans seek to break boundaries. These boundaries can only be broken by adequate education, and like all things, the bare necessities of life, of which electricity is at the peak, will enable that growth and productivity. It is also necessary to think about energy access in the province. There are a number of rural households that do not have access to electricity or meaningful energy in the Eastern Cape province. This may be resultant of their distance from the grid, low population density, coupled with the limited purchasing power, and many other various technical reasons why they cannot be connected to the national grid. And it is these communities we need to think about. The question then arises, how can electricity and meaningful power be brought to these communities that are in deep rural areas?
We know that globally there's this energy transition that's taking place. Previously we had a more centralized mega project form of energy generation where we had the large coal-fired power stations or nuclear power stations. All the electricity gets moved to the distribution grids or municipalities, and then it gets used by the end user. That's a model that's changing with climate change, with the fourth industrial revolution, with a very, very rapidly advancing new technologies. That centralized a model is changing very quickly from what's called a kind of a base load and peaker model is now changing to a very agile form of energy movement. It's decentralized, it's democratized. And so what is this change? We're seeing less of a smaller role, relatively, of large mega project type power stations that look at base load. And we're seeing a more agile, interdependent, or almost dance between different types of energy generation, from definitely the coal and the nuclear sources and the large hydro, but now you're also starting to see things like wind and solar coming into play, and with that variability is also a new kind of energy called gas to power, and certainly here in South Africa, liquid natural gas to power. But not only at the utility scale is it changing, it's also changing for end users. So there's much more of a role for end users in terms of how they use energy and how they actually produce energy. They're called prosumers these days, and there's a greater sense of agency in how people use and manage their own electricity. So there's this growth in what's called rooftop solar or distributed generation or small-scale embedded generation globally, and it's also coming to South Africa. And that has dramatic implications for the traditional energy model, and it implies both challenges, but certainly economic opportunities in the province and internationally. Whether or not we harness those economic opportunities and maximize the socio-economic impact is kind of the role that we're looking to embrace. We currently have 44,000 megawatts of centralized generation in the form of coal-fired power, nuclear power, and diesel-driven peaker plants. In terms of the integrated resources plan that was released in 2019, the older coal-fired power plants are being decommissioned simply to them being old and becoming inefficient. As these power plants get decommissioned, and as our demand for electricity increases as an economy and as a country, there's this growing gap that needs to be filled in respect to generation. Coal does have a role to play, but there's a new least cost techno-economic mix that is emerging, and that's reflected in the Integrated Resources Plan of 2019, which is the roadmap for South Africa, which outlines a very strong role for wind and solar power, which is becoming much cheaper, complemented by liquid natural gas or gas to power. In fact, between now and 2030, or over the next 10 years, the roadmap envisages about 15 or more than 15,000 megawatts of wind farms, more than 6,000 megawatts of solar power, utility scale solar power, and more than 3,000, or in fact 3,000 megawatts of liquid natural gas to power.
In Tokwa Upper Blinkwater, a deep rural community in Fort Beaufort, Eastern Cape, there lies a mini-grid.
It's a self-sustainable mini-grid with solar PV and batteries, and also a backup generator. We supply the energy that is being produced to 70 households through overhead lines, and we have ready boards with 3 switches for each of the households to actually draw power from. Currently at site, there are more than 300 solar panels installed on the ground. The DC electricity that is being produced from the solar PV is being converted by the PV inverters into AC electricity and is being fed to the common AC bus bar. And we have a bi-directional inverter as well. So these inverters convert the excess energy that is being produced from the PV inverters and convert the AC electricity basically from the PV inverters to DC and store them in batteries.
Well, it's actually quite simple, right? So we got just the sun that's providing energy, right? Solar energy, and that energy we just convert into electrical energy, and that electrical energy just gets stored in batteries. And then from these batteries and from what's actually produced from the sun, from these solar panels, get distributed in onto all the homes and gives electricity. That's the very simple explanation. We have a total of 75 kilowatt peak. Then we have also our batteries, who actually are the buffer of the system, who are 130 kilowatt hours. And they provide energy to 70 households, where people can consume like a peak of 2 kilowatts, which is more than enough for a small household. It's all depending on how much do you actually consume, what are the loads. And we see now, just in the beginning, that the loads are still quite small. I think we have a peak of maybe maximum 15 kilowatts, where we actually are theoretically possible to go to 75 kilowatts. But it will grow over time, during the years it will get bigger. And indeed there is a scalability factor incorporated, so we can just add extra PV panels, add extra batteries, because the grid itself, it's installed and it's fully functional and it can transfer all the power. We just need to produce or install a higher production capacity. But for the moment it's not needed, and we're not at that level that we need more production capacity. From the 75 kilowatt peak that we have from our PV panels, so if we only now have a peak consumption of 50 kilowatts, well, then there's still 60 kilowatt that's not been used. So there's still space to grow, which is also normal because people now getting introduced or getting used to energy, and they will buy more appliances. Maybe some businesses will start that will consume this energy until we reach our maximum level of the capacity we have right now. But if you want to install 100 kilowatt extra or 200 kilowatts, it's all possible.
The Eastern Cape Department of Economic Development, Environmental Affairs and Tourism has championed the Eastern Cape Mini-Grid project, which is being implemented in the Raymond Mhlaba local municipality. The project represents a model for supplying high-quality energy to deep rural villages which are not due to be connected to the national electricity grid within the next 5 to 10 years. This represents a first of its kind, a technical and institutional model for rural electrification. The Eastern Cape Department of Economic Development, Environmental Affairs and Tourism has a mandate to spur economic development in the Eastern Cape, not only by direct funding of entrepreneurial development, but also creating an enabling environment for economic development, investment and growth, job creation, and improved quality of life.
The OE, they've got a mandate to provide electricity to each and every household in South Africa. It does not matter where they are. So now they've covered a lot, and the areas that are outstanding, it's the remote areas. And I believe this project will then pave the way for those areas that are difficult to electrify.
Ndiyinzalelwane yalapha kulo mqwebethu wasemthoxa umncinci umngaka ekuthiwa yi-Upper Blinkwater xa ibizwa kwiifama ezisuka xa usuka eBhofolo, yenye yeefama zaseBhofolo. Ifama encinci enezindlu less than even 100 ina 79.
Thanks to the leadership of the provincial government first and foremost, in the sense that this is the kind of partnership that took place firstly at a provincial level between the Economic Development Department together with the Office of the Premier, with the state of Lower Saxony. And then it was brought down to the level of the municipality. We joined in there. We were actually selected as the beneficiary of this kind of partnership.
The relation between the Eastern Cape government and Lower Saxony government is based on a twinning agreement, which has been in place for 25 years now. So we are celebrating the 25th anniversary this year. And this twinning agreement is on various fields on cooperations, and part of these fields is also cooperation on adapting to climate change and reducing greenhouse gases and promoting renewable energies. I think crucial for the success of the project was that the Eastern Cape partners took the lead in the whole development, because after all the project has to apply to and be compliant with South African law and regulations. And another important factor was to have the community on board right from the beginning and all the way through.
Now this is a beacon of hope for the hopeless. Given that it's the first of its kind, I'm actually very, happy about where it is today. And also the fact that we had some municipalities visiting this one, because this is a pilot project. It actually created some anxiety initially, but we were relieved at a later stage to see that everybody was actually looking at us, praising what we're doing, because doing this project, it's not a child's play. It's a mammoth task that we were to carry, and ensure that it was a success. So I'm saying, I'm actually, happy to see that not only us and the community in that area, but other councillors within the institution, as well as the outside world, including other municipalities, were able to actually see and share our experience with them.
The project has completed its first phase of construction and has initiated the second and final phase of construction under GIZ, a global implementing agency for developing projects, DLR as a research partner. And the next step will be to include a wind component to the mini-grid under SAWEP, driven by the Department of Energy. The Eastern Cape Department of Economic Development, Environmental Affairs and Tourism has championed the Eastern Cape Mini-Grid project, which is being implemented in the Raymond Mhlaba local municipality.
So far, actually now we are at the commissioning part of the project. In December 2019, we commissioned and we energized 59 customers or households. On that day, it was the 20th of December. It was one day that the villagers can never forget, when they first had the lights on in their areas. So it was a joyful day. With the project actually complete, it's just the last phase of it, like in terms of making sure that monitoring and evaluation is going to be done, as this is a pilot project. This project will then be taken by other municipalities and implement in their areas where they are facing a challenge of not being able to construct power lines to supply electricity to the households.
I always still think it's big, what we're doing right here, even if it's only for a small community, but it's still like if you say 70 households, so it's big because it's doing something which is new, definitely in the South African context. And we needed to pull it off. There was no other option. So the technology was there, the goodwill was there, the funds were there, people were motivated. We're still motivated. So I think we're all in the same mindset, just to build the mini grid and to keep it going, and ultimately in the end provide energy for the community.
The community of Upper Blinkwater, they are really grateful of what government has done for them. I'm very happy to be part of a team that delivered such a project, the first of its own in our country.
Kwakumnyama apha kungekho mbane. Sigqunyelele ile watile isasigqumelele toti nangoku. Kuthe kwawufika isola savuya kakhulu singabahlali. Sabonakala nathi ukuba singabantu abafana nabanye abantu. Savuya kakhulu basisavuya nangoku okokukho ezisola apha kuthi eMthoca. Iphuhlise lizisileyo isola kuthi kuba xa sibona ba silayita sisenza yonke into sasixelela uba masiyenze malunga nokuphatha umbane lona sunikiweyo wesola. Sonwabe kakhulu ngale ndima uba sizisele isola ukususela ngelaa xesha sasihleli ebumnyameni. Siyakwazi nobukela i-TV, siyakwazi nokwenza yonke into njengoba sinesola nje. Into esingasebenzisiyo ziitovu zombane.
Ndazalwa ngo-1990 okokoko kwakungekho mbane apha. Ever since then siyaqala ukulayita ngo-2019, which is wow for us apha eMthoca.
Siyabulela kulo mbane sifumeneyo. Siyakwazi nokubhasa impahla ngomashini. Ndiyabulela ke siyawufumana ke nowa mahala umbane. Siyakwazi no-charge, yayibona ngosicharge ngempela. Noko ke ayikupheli ilumona ngoba kudala kulayitwa siyakwazi nothengisa ngoku sinazo neefriji, siyakwazi uthenga inyama sizifake efriji, sikwazi uthengisa needrinki yonke into ndithengisa nenyama ngoku ebendingakwazi ndingayithengisi iqala yonke.
Ndiyazibusela nam ndiyavuya ngombane lukhoyo babe singenawo besihlala emnyameni noko siyalayita nangaphandle sihlala esitupini uba kuyakhanya ngaphandle singatyiwa ziinyoka. Siyabilisa namanzi sivase sithe nkosi.
Mna ndiziva ndinoluchulumanco olukhulu kakhulu ngale ndawo yami yalapha e-Upper Blinkwater. Kuba siyaqala ulifumana olu chamu silifumenele elisingazange salifumana kusaphila nootatomkhulu. Siyavuya ke singulo mzi walapha eMthoco ukuba sizibone nathi noko singabantu phakathi kwabantu kuba besiyintlekisa singenambane. Noko ke ngoku noko nathi ke siyakwazi ukuthi hayi noko siyakwazi ulayita, siyakwazi ukucofa, siyakwazi ujayiva, siyakwazi ubukela i-TV, sihlale nathi sibe ngabantu sijonge phaa i-TV. Yonke into nephi nango siyakwazi uyibukela sinochulumanco. Sitya into ezibandayo ngoku. Needrinki zethu ziyabanda, nyama yakho, nyamanyama. Bemandi uhlala endlini akho nabantwana bakho bemandi. Hayi ke singumzi waseMthoca sithi awuntu apha Blinkwater.
Ndinombulelo ongasenzisiyo ngoba kudala sihleli sinomnqweno ukuba nathi masifane nabanye abantu. Ndinombulelo ongasenzisiyo, ndiyabulela kakhulu oko sithe senzelwa umbane apha eMthoca.
The Eastern Cape Department of Economic Development, Environmental Affairs and Tourism has a mandate to spur economic development in the Eastern Cape. The department, working with different stakeholders, have championed innovative ways in which big businesses have a meaningful impact on the communities in which they operate, creating a canvas of benefits, jobs, education, improved quality, and standard of living.
Also, the project actually helped a lot the community members. Job opportunities were created, skills transfer, and also the training and development will carry on in the next 18 months, where the municipal representatives and also the locals or the villagers will also be trained to be able to do maintenance of the mini grid.
Thina singabahlali balapha eUpper Blinkwater eMthoca. Sivuya kakhulu, just because into ezininzi akhange sikwazi ukuzi-experience apha ebomini. Even abantwana balapha few of them that are educated just because of technology akhaye bayifumane loo nto leyo. If ever bawubungumntana ozimiseleyo ufuna ufunda, you have to leave your parents behind, uhambe uyohlala eBhofolo, ezihlobeni, okanye uyoqala igumbi ebuncincini bakho. So I'm one of them. Mna ndahlala igumbi when I was doing standard 5. Ndahamba ndohlala igumbi ndashiya abazali bam kuba ndifuna imfundo up until now. So if ever apha ke awukwazi uma kanjalo, abantwana balapha abakwazi ufunda, but now since ba umbani ukhona, i-technology izawuba khona, and then bakwazi ukufumana izinto ezininzi abazifunayo.
The Eastern Cape Department of Economic Development, Environmental Affairs and Tourism forms part of the Eastern Cape Provincial Government. It is mandated to spearhead the growth and development of the provincial economy and is committed to improving the lives of all its citizens. Spearheading the growth and development of the provincial economy, the Eastern Cape Department of Economic Development, Environmental Affairs and Tourism, which forms part of the Eastern Cape Provincial Government, has funded a number of businesses promoting decent employment, sustainable development, and local economic participation.